Ruroc's forge shoot has to be one of our most satisfying projects. From the beginning, we storyboarded and worked with the client to get an idea of what we wanted to produce to promote this new helmet range. And then we went out on location scouts, took a couple of shots, just working out what exactly we were going to use within the forge. From the start, I wanted this project to have a really rich, deep quality to it. So the final look is very saturated, and we've got lots of very high contrast areas within the shots, even though everything's very, very dark. And we cut out as much light as possible from the actual location to start with. So we were working with a really blank slate, trying to keep all the light off walls with flags, using barn doors and lights to cut everything. So we were just lighting the areas that we wanted, not bouncing things all over the place or using lots of soft light. It just wouldn't have had the impact. One of the features which we really leaned on this project was a use of mixed colour temperatures. Right at the start, you've got an HMI pushing through slatted barn doors and lots of atmosphere and haze to create lots of shafts of light. And then indoors, we've got rich tungsten colours which are enhanced and motivated by the forge itself. So we've got a lot of fire in there, and also the glowing metal. It goes red hot and is being hammered. So all of that really motivates the light. And for the final grade, we went with a very teal and orange effect. We did work through a couple of test grades when we got back, but it turned out that the one which resonated most was the slightly teal and orange look, rather than the bluer, more standard colour range which we tried first of all. We knew that when we lit this location, we had to be very precise, so we immediately reached for our Dedo-like kit, and that allowed us to create very precise shafts of light at just the colour temperature we wanted and with just the intensity we wanted. It was infinitely variable. Having that kind of control meant that we could just create the pockets of light where we needed them, know that we wouldn't be pushing or bouncing light onto any of the backgrounds, and also because we have both the traditional tungsten halogen Dedo-like kit and a more modern DLED 4, which is a daylight balanced one, we were able to mix colour temperatures indoors for some of the close-up shots as well. And in that scenario, we would use the DLED 4 just to create a bit of layering, if you like. So that would fall onto some of the background elements, where the foreground elements were lit with the tungsten. So we were just continuing the theme of the mixed colour temperatures here, but on a smaller scale, perhaps where you couldn't see directly the HMI in shot. We could bring in that Dedo light just to play off even the haze in the background. Catching some of the haze in the background of a shot created this wonderful, slightly blue quality to the atmosphere that was in the room. And it was really interesting to see how that all came together. Now, one thing which we had to fight when we were on location was actually the fact that in a working forge, you don't want lots of smoke. You have extractor fans, you set your place up because it's going to be very, very hot in there to allow air to flow through. And that meant that a lot of the haze that we were actually pushing into the room immediately got drawn out through the chimneys and drawn out through the slightly less than air-proof doors. To combat this, we turned off the extractor fans when we needed to get shot, when we need to fill the room with haze. And then we also got gel, and when we were setting up, we worked out that we wanted the HMI to have a slight shift in the colour temperature and the look of it. So we gelled that, and rather than gelling the HMI itself, we actually used some big sheets of gel that we had, put them over the barn doors, and that prevented the wind just blowing straight through. It killed two birds with one stone, made the room a bit more airtight, and it got our colour temperature to the space that we wanted it to be in. So anything that you can do like that, where you're actually working efficiently and not having to combat two problems with two different solutions, gets a big thumbs up when we're on location. We shot this entirely in RAW, mostly because we really wanted to work the colours when we got back, but we're right down next to the blacksmith and he's bringing hot metal over straight out of the forge and smacking it with a hammer. We don't always get a chance to set the exposure exactly where we wanted it for that particular piece of metal, because the brightness that the metal actually is varies greatly when it comes out of the forge. So you can get a piece which is white hot, say, or you can have something which is burning a little bit more orange and it's not actually emitting so much light. So being able to just tweak that in post was really beneficial. Likewise, when something gets thrown on the fire and there's a big burst of flames, knowing that we've got safety in the highlights and we're not just going to blow out straight away is a real benefit and means that you can work a bit more freely. It means you're working more within a range. So you've got your exposure set for the scene, you know how you want everything to look, and any extra elements which are going to flare out or just explode are in the upper ranges. They're still there, but you're able just to pull them back in post if you need. A lot of the camera movements here are very subtle. So we worked on the easy rig quite a lot, mostly because we had to move quick. We couldn't really be in the way as he's moving around, he's moving hot pieces of metal, he's hammering them and working them. So we've got to be able to jump in when needed, get the shot and move on. We're shooting in slow motion, so the movement's not going to be that great. A little drift with the easy rig is all we needed. For the wider shots where things are set up, we went to a jib and we're just doing subtle jib movements throughout. And at the end, you can see those when we're getting the final product shots. We're just jibbing across, revealing and creating a little bit more interest, foreground, background, still shooting on some longer lenses so we get that nice parallax between them. Now, one of the greatest parts of this project for me personally was looking at the storyboards and then looking at some of the final frames and realizing that we had achieved what we were setting out to in a very complete way. And the final element of this, when we were coming to edit everything down, we found a fantastic track on Premium Beat. It sounded like what we were watching, so there was lots of hammering and heavy sounds and almost a sucking of air sort of sound, which fitted very nicely with the fire. You can imagine the sort of flames pulling air through as the bellows are bringing the furnace up to temperature. As a complete project, it had all of the hallmarks that we'd like to see in everything that we produce. It's well thought out. The location worked for us, not against us. We didn't have to fight it. We had time to think about lighting and how we would achieve a look which was enhanced by the lighting that we were bringing in. All of these elements go to create a strong, interesting piece of content which will sit nicely on any platform you put it on with a suitable crop, with a suitable edit.